Celebrity worship syndrome is an obsessive addictive disorder in which a person becomes overly involved with a celebrity's personal and professional life. So reads the first line of Wikipedia. However, the medical basis on classifying celebrity worshipping behaviour as distinct from other obsessive disorders is ropey, to say the least. So why do we see so many people fawning over those in the public eye? Are we all obsessives? I can't answer that. Sorry, I'm not a psychologist. So instead, I'd like to talk about the new age of online celebrity attachment and the paradoxes of parasocial relationships. Before we can go much further, I think it would be helpful for us to lay some foundational terminology, as the terms used in this video are all very closely linked, overlapping in ways that's confusing even to modern academics. As the crux of this video lies within parasocial relationships, let's start out with that term. Such a relationship can be defined by its complete lack of equality in pretty much all respects. But it's easier to describe with an example, such as a pop star and a superfan. This superfan truly does have a deep and personal connection to their chosen celebrity. However, the pop star doesn't feel the same way in return to our individual fan. It is true that the pop star may have a deep and personal connection to their fan base as a whole, but they remain ignorant of any individual's existence. And this is what defines parasociality. One party member is experiencing social pleasures simply by watching their counterpart, while the counterpart has no knowledge of their existence. These kinds of relationships have skyrocketed in the modern information age we find ourselves in now. We all have instant access via the internet to figures who have placed themselves or have been placed into the public eye. The next definition we must look at is celebrity worship syndrome. Now, before we do, it is true that parasocial behaviour can lead someone closer towards attachment, accompanied by some traits of obsessive disorders. However, celebrity worship syndrome is a distinct medical diagnosis. This stretches way beyond your mother's slight obsession with Brad Pitt and is defined by erratic obsessive behaviours, huge lifestyle changes centered around their object of obsession, declarations of unwavering permanent loyalty through tattoos, for example, or long-term financial loans to facilitate their behavior, harassment of their object through multiple non-consenting attempts to communicate, and eventually full-blown digital or physical stalking. So at first glance, celebrity worship syndrome seems to mirror other obsessive stalking disorders, right? Well, this isn't really the case. There's actually a lot of misinformation about obsessive disorders and stalking and the space found between. Stalking comes in 5 flavours: the intimacy-seeking stalker, the rejected stalker, the resentful stalker, the incompetent suitor, and the predatory stalker. The causes of these behaviours vary, but in each case, the stalker usually has a mix of neurological issues and inflammatory environmental conditions. The main neurological components could be disorders such as APD, antisocial personality disorder, PPD, paranoid personality disorder, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, ASD, autism spectrum disorder, social isolation, and delusions. Now, note which of those names has obsessive in it. It's just OCD. Now, the obsessions and compulsions found in OCD are unwanted. Of course, different experiences can be found across the spectrum of OCD, but these obsessions usually manifest as repeated, unwanted, intrusive thoughts. Now, this is the void between celebrity worship syndrome and obsessive disorders. Worshippers adore their object of obsession, and they don't want to stop it. Obsessive compulsives will often start out disliking their behaviours and thoughts, and only after their condition worsens, or another previously mentioned disorder develops, can a psychological snap happen. You see how I was saying earlier how about all these terms overlap with each other. Sometimes it's best to define the terms as opposed to each other rather than sole-standing phenomena. That way you can see the differences more clearly. But I'm afraid I'm about to make it this much more complicated by introducing our last term, celebrity attachment. You know how I mentioned your mum's slight obsession with Brad Pitt? Well, let's see whether this kind of relationship can be defined as celebrity attachment. You can imagine your basic parasocial relationship now, I hope, and you should be able to see how your mother and Brad Pitt map onto that scale. Your mother fits squarely in the role as audience, and Brad Pitt as the host. However, when the show is over, your average parasocialite will leave the theatre and head home. But your mother stays behind. She buys the t-shirts and the biographies and the memoirs, then queues for a signature and a selfie and studies the literature on her way home. And then she's back in the theatre the next day. See, I would define celebrity attachment as an increase in the frequency of engaging in parasocial relationships. Your mother loves Brad Pitt so much that she feels a degree of responsibility to check in on him almost daily. What's on his Instagram story? What's in his new Vogue interview? Brad Pitt just wrote a column in the New Yorker. I must read it even though I live in Ealing. This can seem like a little much, but in contrast to celebrity worship syndrome, your mother is under no illusions about the nature of this relationship. She won't make repeated attempts to contact Mr. Pitt because she knows Mr. Pitt has his own life, his own friends, his own family. She knows that they don't truly know each other, yet she's still content to love and support him, and crucially, expects nothing in return. For the moment that she starts expecting something back, that's when she begins to delude herself into thinking the relationship is not parasocial by nature. She will begin equalizing her status with his in her mind, which will reflect in actions of worship and eventually harassment. Right, definitions done. The boring part is over. We can talk properly now. Let's start by looking at a short history of parasocial relationships. Using my loose definition of parasociality as a unequal relationship in which one person knows the other and the other is ignorant, parasocials have surprisingly existed for thousands of years. Peasants and their rulers, for example. In socially successful kingdoms, the peasant class would have great love and loyalty to their rulers, while the rulers themselves just plunder the wealth of the land, blissfully ignorant of the lies of those allowing this and putting food on their plate. A power-based parasocial relationship was the only flavour around up until the advent of universities, some 1100 years ago. The construction of universities allowed for the mass production of Greek and Arabic philosophical works, and Arabic medicine and mathematics on parchment, allowing 9th century students to read into the lives of philosophers and physicians from all over Southern Europe, North Africa, Arabia, and eventually Asia. These students could form deep and personal connections to philosophers like Aristotle, a thinker with a central focus on having a healthy mind and virtues. You can see how easily someone could become emotionally attached to this. And of course, by then, Aristotle was dead, so there's no way for him to return the friendship. Then we get the arts revolution, where music and plays and paintings balloon into a huge cultural phenomena, with composers soaring into the roles of pop stars, playwrights and actors like directors and movie stars. Then the printing press comes along and that changes the game entirely, allowing art and ideas, but more importantly, personalities to spread across the world, with an English monk who knows French, and then a French monk who knows Arabic. A man in Slough can have his ideas, transported across the whole world. My point is that throughout history, people have found ways to socially engage with each other without even being face to face or knowing each other. Human beings are naturally very social animals, and we're good at getting what we want. If we want connection, we'll find it in anything. However, the quantities of people and the frequency of their engagement in parasocial relationships has been increasing rapidly since the genesis of the internet celebrity. Internet celebrities such as streamers, YouTubers, Instagram influencers have a chokehold on the parasocial market. This is due to a number of factors, but chiefly post frequency. The more often an influencer posts, the more regularly their fans will come back, and the more insight the fans get into that influencer's life. This greatly increases the perceived intimacy between the fan and the influencer on the fan's behalf, whilst the influencer simply takes in the ad revenue. Now, of course, it's fine to be interested in the day-to-day lives of your favourite celebrities, but when someone develops a full-on parasocial relationship, that social desire for a true relationship is being artificially fulfilled by the influencer. The space in your social capacity for intimate relationships, which is finite by the way, usually about 30 to 100 people, based on the average tribe size of the human civilization over the last 200,000 years, is being stolen by simulated friendships. For every parasocial relationship you have, you lose the opportunity to have a real relationship. Not just due to maxing out your social capacity, but also time factors. If you engage in parasocial relationships in this age, you're probably doing it via the internet, which means you're spending a heck of a lot of time on your phone and not a lot of time outside, possibly forming new friendships or deepening connections with current friends. There's also the idealization factor. The lives we peek into aren't authentic. They're edited, enhanced, and selective. The relationship we form with those in the public eye are consistently satisfying. This is not how real friendships work. Real friendships include cooperation through difficult times, not just a one-sided stream of someone's perfect life. But if we continue to allow ourselves to build more and more parasocial relationships, we start accepting this easy mode friendship as the norm. This could possibly leave us resenting our real friends for not meeting the standard of internet celebrities. And the final way in which parasocial relationships inhibit your ability to form new friendships is through factionalized political thinking. Now, some of you might wonder, what the hell have parasocial relationships got to do with politics? Well, a great deal, actually. Politicians of the last 100 years have become enthralled by an idea called populism. Briefly put, populism is a political tactic where you appeal to the majority consensus of political socio-economic issues and blame the elite establishment. And with a populist figurehead of a political party, a level of equality is established between the politician and their voter base. This perceived equality lends itself to deeper connections and sows the seeds for a parasocial relationship, and further down the line, celebrity attachment. This is dangerous, because then it's not celebrity attachment, it's political attachment. Ideological loyalty is one of the most harmful traits when it comes to making new friends. Divisive media has infected the internet and poisoned a great deal of those in the public eye. And you're more likely to unquestioningly trust the word of a friend, right? Even a parasocial one? Yep. Look around you at the world. People are spending less time forming opinions and beliefs and values of their own and are simply stealing them off their favourite politician or stand-up comedian or, anyone who comments on current affairs. So, what do we do? What can we do? I'm afraid the genie is out the bottle on this one. We're not going to shut the internet down. We're going to have to live with it. But with a bit of self-awareness, we can keep our parasocial relationships in check, and maybe they won't be so bad. So what does a healthy balance of relationships look like? Well, unfortunately, there isn't a one-size-fits-all. As I mentioned before, the human capacity for close friendships varies from 30 to 100. So a more socially inclined person might have 30 parasocial relationships and 70 real friends. Whereas if you gave those 30 parasocial relationships to someone less socially inclined, they're maxed out. It shuts the door to regular friendships. And that's a rather unhealthy position to be in, I'm sure you'd agree. A more reliable indicator on how healthy your relationship ratios are is simply your personal mental well-being. For example, prolonged feelings of loneliness is probably a sign that you're not engaging in the real world with your real friends as much as you should be. Having a short temper with mates or holding them to an impossibly high standard is probably a sign that you're idealizing your friendships through a misinformed outlook, or experiencing extreme social anxiety when it comes to your turn to talk. That's probably a sign that you've grown too used to the one-way street of parasocial relationships. You know, when the influencer does all the talking and you do all the silent loving and listening. These are just 3 indicators, to name a few, which I've personally seen in myself. And I hope that by having watched this video up till now, you can deduce for yourself other signs that you may be slipping into unhealthy parasocial behavior. So let's say you took my advice from this video and you wanted to tackle your relationship with the parasocial. How would you do that? How would you know it's working? What are the signs of a healthy parasocial relationship? Well, the easy answer to the latter is by simply flipping the signs of an unhealthy relationship. So, for example, a reduction in feeling lonely is probably a sign that you're spending more time with your real friends. Accepting people for who they are, their flaws and strengths as one in a personality, is a sign that you're no longer holding your friends to such a high, unachievable standard. Or you can see a boost in social confidence, which comes from practice and patience in engaging with real relationships again. For my story personally, as a child, I was very chatty, confident, and a bit of an attention seeker. Then I got 24/7 access to the internet, and more specifically YouTube, so consequently my teen years were far lonelier. Rather than me coming home from school and then going straight back out to the park, I would come home, stay home, in my room, on my phone. Only really meeting friends outside of school hours for birthday parties or the odd gaming session. These newfound habits ingrained themselves into my day-to-day life, which really worsened my mental health and has stuck me with a almost crippling social anxiety, which I've only started addressing over the past 2 years. In fact, this YouTube channel is just a way of me saying everything I've wanted to say in that time. So I addressed my parasocial relationships in 4 main ways. I have reduced my average screen time by about 35%, from 10 hours starting in COVID going all the way through to about 2023. I just fully addicted to my phone. And now it's down to about 6 hours, 6.5 hours, which is pretty good, I think. 35%, not bad. I've replaced one of my favourite forms of parasocial content, which is reaction videos, with movie nights with friends or watching the entirety of Doctor Who with my brother and my brother-in-law. I get their real-time reactions, and then I get to ask them about it afterwards. Crazy, right? Number 3, I've tried to make an active effort in being the friend who reaches out first to organise social gatherings. Now, this, of course, has been the toughest move for me, as I still do suffer from anxiety triggered by social pressures, and there's nothing more pressurizing and stressful as being the organizer. And finally, making this video. This has been a deeply introspective experience for me, choosing how I wanted to tackle this subject in both a personal and accessible way. But much in the same way that there isn't one rule for an unhealthy relationship, there isn't one for a healthy relationship either. Due to this, the only universal, or as close to universal as I can get, piece of advice I can give to set you travelling in the right direction is for you to diversify your relationships. Have some people in your life who you love and can talk to about anything. And have some people in your life with whom you enjoy the more simple pleasures, or even just company. And yes, have some people in your life that you can allow yourself to admire, care about, and follow without the need of recognition or even communication. That can be healthy when taken with honesty, humility, and self-awareness. Once again, thank you so much for watching this video and have a wonderful day. If you like the video, then any sort of engagement goes a long way to helping the channel. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe, even share it with anyone who you think might need this message. That'll be all for today. I'll see you in 2 weeks.